Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Trionfo. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I kind of wanted to start off things when I got a chance to talk, and since I'm getting a chance to talk now, to say that I actually got to meet Ryan twice. Well, I met him once, and we got together a second time since the last meeting. Ryan and I live close together. In fact, just a few blocks away, it turns out, from each other, which is pretty crazy. And so we met out and we had dinner together one night. And then he came over here with his Raspberry Pi, what is it called? The 400? Ryan,
Yeah.
is that right? And he showed me the program he's been working on and how he runs emulation on the Raspberry Pi, and which is its own computer for those not familiar with it. It kind of reminds me of the old days with like the Timex itself, or like the C64 or what have you. A little faster, a little faster. Oh, cool. That's it. Yeah. So he was showing me that, and we got it going, and he has an emulator running. What emulator do you have going for the Timex?
Well, I've been mainly using FUSE, but I've got ZEsarUX on there.
Why don't you tell us about what you've been working on your side of it, and what you're showing me?
Well, you may have seen me post about the quick font program in the forum, and that was a program I did, of course, back in the day in '85 or so, and I had on tape, but that wasn't going to load. So, but I happened to have a rolled up listing or two, and typed that back in, and then.
Which I want to say he brought over to my house, and he just unrolled it and then unrolled it and then unrolled it. It was long.
It's not that long, I don't think.
It seemed long to me.
It's not that much.
It's about 3 feet long, right? Something like that.
Let's see what we got here.
I liked it.
Yeah, 3 feet. You're right.
Yeah, pretty long.
How many lines per foot?
Oh, jeez.
I'll measure it. So, and then of course I find some bugs, and then I was looking at it and I'm like, oh, well, I was going to post it to the group, and then like I look at it and I go, well, this was only ever written for me, and that it's kind of not great. So let me improve it. So I set about doing that, and then got pretty good, and then posted it, and Adam noted that the key loop was a bit pokey, which it always had been, and I guess I was just too used to it. You kind of get used to the little increment, and when to press the key, how fast to press the key to just be in sync with the key read loop to do it right. And so I had to go at improving that, and that did okay. But then there were some other. One of the parts was, when you select a character, it reads the 8 bytes of the character definition, and then loads those into a big character array to display in big bits, magnified. And so what I was doing was I was reading 8 bytes and then decoding it into bits so I could set the block characters in a big array, and that kind of was a slow process. And I think a little bit of things related to that was covered recently in the forum.
Has anyone else actually tried Ryan's program here? Because I don't think the last couple of versions have been posted, but like it's the quick font, and
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
I don't post a new version.
Yeah, I need to post that last version. I thought I was going to double check it, but I think it might be at least certainly better.
Yeah, he sent it to me privately
I totally
through email.
Forgot to do that.
And I tried it out, and and then he came over and it worked. And then he came over here and we were trying it on real hardware. And when we moved the font from like RAM or from ROM to RAM, it worked okay. But when I made changes and tried to save them, it kind of garbled it up a bit. And so he, under emulation on his Raspberry Pi, he's over here and he's like, let me see what's going on here. And we were talking Z80, he had a Z80 assembler going in the background. And I was like, whoa, this is the only other person I've talked Z80 with is Carl, like locally. I mean, so to have someone else who knows any Z80 at all, like in my house is, I was going to say
Right.
rare, but I guess I've had 2 people here in the past few months, so it's not that rare, I guess. Not in
Well,
this
yeah,
house anyway.
well, yeah, you'd talked to Carl, but I don't know if I've talked Z to anybody in decades, so it's a bit
Right.
weird. But
Except on here, we'd get into the Z80 once in a while.
right. Well, that was what was
Albuquerque
interesting.
becoming the hub now of Sinclair stuff.
That's correct.
What do you mean becoming? We are the hub.
Well, it's the original. It's where the Altair was born. If anybody
That's right.
doesn't remember that.
Yeah.
In
Speaking
fact,
of the Altair,
I used to work near one of the places where MITS was
oh yeah, yeah,
by the airport.
yeah. I've talked to Carl, and we both went to the local community college here, and in the electronic lab, even in the 90s, they had an Altair just sitting there, collecting dust, which is because they were so common here in Albuquerque, and you'd see documentation around, and it's cool. It's cool to see them. So Ryan, you don't have a way to show your quick font program, huh? Because you're doing this on an iPad.
Well, I don't really have it over there. I tried to get the Zoom client for the browser in the Pi, and I think it's just a little out of date. It doesn't ever connect.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I could probably do a little.
Because I suppose I might be able to load it too, but I don't want to screw up what I've already loaded, because I was going to share my screen, and knowing me, I'll just be like, oh no, now I've messed everything up.
Yeah, it does look like I could share the screen on the iPad, and I found in the menu there, but obviously it's not there. I don't know.
Yeah.
If this is.
Man, I can't show off my office. If I showed off my office, it'd be embarrassing. Like this desk behind me is full of crap and junk that whenever we have a meeting, I clear off the desk.
Well, I can't probably only see me, or is that backwards?
No, it's straight.
I can see, yeah.
We can make it out.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's run that. So this new version has some machine code. So here's the old way of doing it. Put it in a REM statement. So this one's going to have to load it the first time.
Yeah, so he's got like a little menu bar going across here that as each thing is poked in the memory, it shows what's happening, which is pretty neat.
Okay, so there's that. And you got to tell me if I'm not centered, because
it's a little hard to see the top of the emulated screen.
Oh, let me tilt this.
There you go.
monitor.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
we can
let
read
me
your
in the
email too.
glare.
Yeah, that's much better.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. So one of the things here is if you view, of course, there's no font loaded. This is the reference characters, and then so the user font's blank right now on these lines. So one of the things I added was you could load the ROM font in as a starting point. And so we're going to do that. And so that's done in machine code to not be pokey. I mean, it's not long to wait, but it's pretty simple machine code to copy that. So now I got an identical font and I'm viewing A. And so you press the letter of the character to view. And so each time you do that, you see it's showing it large here. And so it's having to decode the bit, all 64 bits out of there to set an inverse space or a space in this array. And that was kind of pokey. And so I figured out a way to do that in machine code and to make that faster. But that's really only two things the machine code's doing here. And yeah, the bug we were talking about earlier actually wasn't in the machine code. It was in the, I don't remember if you remember, Adam, I told you that it was in the feature of when you're editing it. of zeroing all the bits.
Yeah.
For some reason, I'd only ever tested it with a blank initial font. And I think, so when you had something there already, then it didn't clear an array where I keep the bytes actually from the previous. And it was combining them with the 0 bits, and it was mangling it.
Right. Well, what's funny about like having the group and having people test your software is when we test our own software, we don't really test it like we think we're testing it. We're like, oh, it
exactly.
works fine. This is perfect. And then
Right.
like, you know, you hand it off to someone else, and like right away, I ran into an issue, and you're like, shoot, I didn't even think of looking at that.
So you can go in here and you could modify the existing font, and then go on in there. And so that sample one I did was just coming in here and making a bit of it thicker. It was pretty easy to do once you copy the original. And so you can see them going in up there.
Yep.
And so you've got some functions here between a viewing and an editing mode. So you can use the arrow keys, which Adam I think you were using directly with the shift key. So when you hit the space bar, that broke into the program.
Yeah.
So it was really meant for this emulator lets you use the arrow keys. And apparently it's not like holding the shift down.
Right.
Since it's an emulated arrow. So it actually works that way.
Sorry, I don't mean to break the program.
But so you can individually copy the ROM character if you want to.
Well, one of the nice features too is that I don't know if the version that you've uploaded, Ryan, has this or not. I can't remember, but the version that I've been using, I have the ability to load a whole font that he created separately from tape, and that works fine. And then it just loads it in.
Yeah, let's
I can mess around with that.
Oh, I don't have. Let's.
The interface for Fuse is a lot better than the interface I use. I don't use Fuse.
Interface for Fuse is a lot.
There we are.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so now I got that little font, so I can shift 4 and just load the next font. So there's that font now loaded. You can see. So that's just a bytes. Whoops. So that was just some bytes on the saved to tape. So if you stop the program,
we're losing your top half of your screen here, Ryan. There we go.
Oh, sorry.
Are you holding it by hand as you're doing all this? The camera?
Yes.
Yeah, he's doing shaky cam.
Well, I've got it sitting on something, but
all right.
I gotta tilt it. So when you quit it, it kind of gives you some info on how to use the font. But on the distribution, let's see, I include this sample font loader to show you how to, you could do other ways, but what this does is it clears with an address, which moves the top of memory down to push the basic area down and leave rooms where you can put the font, which takes 768 bytes. So then you set the system variable to where you want to point to the font. So here's how to point to the one in ROM, which is the default. That's just to make sure we can see the characters being written, just in case. Okay, then you load the code into that spot. And then you set the system variables to point to that. And then a reminder that that system variable, hopefully I'm getting that, there we are, that that system variable is actually 256 bytes less than the address of the font, which seems peculiar. Let's see.
Yeah, did you ever figure out why that is? Or maybe David might know, I suppose.
That is because one of the things you want to do is to find the bytes of any particular character is you need to know the offset from the beginning of the font to the character you have. And if we look, where is
We
that?
probably don't want to get too deep down to this. I don't think you need to explain your code, but maybe you can load up a font and show what maybe you can do with it.
Oh, where's that?
There's a lot of parentheses there.
Advanced math, Adam.
I was just looking for. I was just looking for the. I'm forgetting where. All right,
Oh, something I wanted
anyway,
to suggest to you, Ryan, about your you were running into some issues with the rem statements taking up. Obviously, they take up RAM. If you use ZMake Basic to write your basic code, you can put like I think if you make your first character on a line a £, or I think it's a £, one character, then that line is just ignored by ZMake Basic, and so you can put all the comments you want, and they don't get included with the basic program.
Right. Well, that was for that other program I was trying out, and then it turns out it cared how big the basic program was,
Right, I remember,
even though it wasn't obvious. Anyway, I can't seem to find that line for some reason, but basically it's 256 bytes less because to calculate the offset of any character, you take the code of it and subtract 32, and then multiply that by 8 to get the byte offset into the font. Well, turns out 8, if you start the font address 256 bytes lower, you can skip the -32 part of the calculation, and that makes all their calculations simpler and quicker in the ROM.
Oh, I see. Like in the ROM, you mean?
So they don't have to do the subtraction; they just do the multiplication and add it, and so it's already 256 bytes, 8 times 32 offset. So that was how. A thing I was going to show, I don't know if it's been discussed. You were talking about all the parentheses.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh wait, this isn't doing it. Okay, that's. No, I thought that was an example of it. It was something to do with the way, because there was a thread a while back about the Boolean logic in Sinclair Basic.
Yeah.
And how you didn't have bitwise operators. Yeah. But which is true. There is an interesting behavior, which is you can say, if you remember, you can say.
Hey, Ryan,
I forget what they call it. It's
rather than keep going down this, Ryan, I know that you wanted to ask the group some questions about how people use their computers. Why don't we take a look at this maybe more next time, and we'll ask the people, because there's like what, 9 people I think participating right now.
Oh, we got some more now.
Yeah,
we got a couple folks.
Yeah, if there's anyone else who's maybe perhaps not ever talked or been on the meeting before, maybe you can speak up. Well, thank you for that, Ryan, by the way. That was really cool. And maybe you can speak. Is there anyone here who's not been on one of these meetings that has anything to say?
Well, Adam, before you do, I mentioned a story that David told me in a Zoom meeting that we had individually about a program that he had written, David Solly, a program he had written for somebody who ran a business and was using that program until kind of recently.
Yeah.
David, can you tell that story? Because you tell it better than I do, having done the work.
Okay, sorry about that. I had my cell phone too close, and every time I said something like "okay," I wanted to expected me to say something that I could search. Anyway, actually, I didn't write the program. The lady whose name is
Was this Iris Tenholder?
Iris Holder, yes, who owned a cafe in Ottawa named Cafe Whim. She was the one who actually wrote the programs, and I used them a number of times to do data entry for her. But it was one of the more unusual applications of the time, the TS-1000. So she actually wrote her own ledger program and wrote her own payroll program. And she and I were going to cooperate on an inventory program. But by that time, she had acquired 2068. And together we both took a Pascal programming course. Excuse me, allergies. Anyway, we were going to start programming in Pascal to make an inventory program, but then at that time, she just decided that she had enough of the cafe business, and she sold the business, and the idea for an inventory program kind of died with her retiring from Cafe Whim. But considering that she was using a TS-1000 and Larry Kenny's disk drive system, she created a fairly complex program. And the lady is still alive, although she's 89 now. I was thinking of inviting her to the group.
You should do that. See if you can get her to somehow show up.
Because she could probably tell you more about the development of that or those programs than I can. But
well, actually, I'm a little surprised to hear that you still are in contact with her all of these years later. Like,
oh yeah, we became pretty solid friends.
Oh, that's cool.
I was on the rocks again between jobs, and I asked Iris if there was something I could do for her for a couple of weeks. I did input into her TS-1000 programs to help her with that. Yeah, it was quite amazing. And then I converted some of them over to the 2068, and she used the Lunter emulator for quite a while to keep her programs going. So,
now, what was the name of the emulator? I don't. It's an emulator.
Z80. It was called the Z80 Spectrum emulator, and it was invented by a Dutch fellow named Gerton Lunter.
So is that the same as just like what we use nowadays with a cartridge, or
like it was a DOS? It ran on DOS, and
yeah, it ran on DOS, and he later created a Windows version. But the moment that Windows was updated past Windows XP, it stopped working. So I think the program, even though it was the Windows version, was essentially running on the back of DOS and using a window of some sort to display, because I can still run this Z80 program on Windows 11 using the DOSBox emulator, and it works perfectly. But no, I can't work a so-called reworked Windows version. So that's why I eventually had to switch over to
a different emulator.
I'm sorry?
A different
a different
emulator?
emulator, yeah.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, for some reason, I block at names. Okay, you may laugh here. I'll let you get away with it this time. Next time, though.
David,
Uh,
let me ask you, how did you you said you took a class in Pascal. Was that your introduction to Pascal? Is that when you started using the high-soft Pascal?
yeah, that's when I started using high soft Pascal. Actually, I got the high soft Pascal before I took the course, but my knowledge of Pascal was between 0 and zilch.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to use the program properly, I did take the Pascal course. Though what they taught in this at that time was the ISO Pascal and the high soft Pascal in some ways was just different enough that it did cause a few programming problems that I had to learn to work around. Anyway, my very, 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 very first program in using the TS-1000 was a library cataloging program, which I typed in from. Are you laughing at me?
No, I'm just laughing. I'm laughing at the concept of a library cataloging program in 16K. I mean, you've got the program, and then you've got, what you can catalog 4 books.
Well, the great thing about
well,
that, though,
actually,
is that you can the ZX81 or the Timex 1000 is not much bigger than an index card, which can fit right into the card catalog.
Right,
You just put it right in the box along.
You just put the computer in the drawer.
That was strange that you should mention that, because that's one of the things that I did do, but I very shortly got the 64K RAM pack, so I was able to make more. I could make bigger files, but yeah, it was still skeletal cataloging compared to what can be done nowadays with modern library cataloging programs, which you can add practically everything but the kitchen sink.
So I have a couple of questions about the program that was used for the I guess you said for the ledger and maybe for the business. Was that used past the 80s, or you said she closed down her business eventually, the cafe, but when was that?
That was the year 2000 exactly, if I remember correctly.
So she was using the 2068 and all the way to, but using an emulator of the 2068 all the way to the year 2000 to run software that was written in the 1980s. Am I getting this straight?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
And was it saving to like an emulated tape?
No, she was saving to. She had a. Oh, okay. What are you asking?
So she's running it in the emulator. Was the emulator talking to an emulated disk system like an interface 1, or was it?
Well, it had a interface 1. Excuse me. Sorry, let me get my breath here. The emulator could produce TAP files,
Okay.
TAP.
Yep.
And that's where she saved most of the stuff. But we were also looking into using the MDR files, because it could emulate interface 1, and the interface 1 allowed us to use emulated MDR files, that's microdrive files. And in some ways that speeded up things, because the microdrive save would overwrite anything with the same name.
Oh.
So she didn't have to constantly hunt for the old program and delete it, or try and remember what the latest unique name was, that she gave to the files. So,
So
yeah, go ahead.
Did she have an accountant that she worked with? Like, did she know that at the end of the year, go get her taxes done for the business, as it were?
I don't know.
Okay,
To tell
because
you the
I can just imagine the accountant, showing up with this, God knows what. And the accountant's like, "What on earth are you thinking?"
Well, she was actually a pretty good, pretty clever lady, or she is a pretty clever lady still, and she probably did the whole shebang, even down to doing her taxes.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But you have to remember that the Canadian tax system, from all I hear, is a lot simpler than the American tax system or the British tax system. So maybe it wasn't that much of a deal. From what I understand, the tax system in the States and in the UK is one of these ones that has everybody running around in circles, screaming and pulling out their hair.
It's a fair assessment. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at how many of us are missing hair.
But anyway, yeah, like Adam, was it? Sorry, I lost track of who was speaking. I was interested in fonts. I was interested in fonts and fonts of creation, mostly because I was heavily into foreign languages. I even went through several foreign language magazines and found a German version of Password 2, which you're allowed to write German with the umlauted characters and the double S. So
I didn't even know such thing existed.
Well,
yeah.
I wonder, I mean, I guess that means the Spectrum was popular there. I mean, the Spectrum was popular everywhere, really. I mean, it seems like it was so inexpensive. So
Well,
I guess why not in Germany?
Yeah,
Well, it was surely popular in Europe, yeah, because I
Yeah.
mean, so Germany being part of Europe, I'm sure that had quite a following there.
Well, it would have been half of Germany at that time.
Well, yeah, West
It would have been
Germany,
only West Germany.
right?
I mean, certainly East Germany had their own, they may have gotten access to some of the Soviet bloc clones.
But hundreds of them, it seems like, now that I've learned a little bit.
But I eventually learned how to make a font designer program. Well, not exactly full. It wasn't a full-fledged thing. A font loader program.
Mm-hmm.
So I could load fonts, different types of fonts into my Pascal programs. The only thing is that the font program only worked when you were using Pascal in what was called 31 character mode. If you tried it in the 51 character mode, it wouldn't work for some reason. But the nice thing,
characters across the screen, like 51 columns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But the nice thing about Pascal is you could, in your Pascal definitions, I don't know how many people here have worked with Pascal before. Okay. You could define a character array of so many bytes. I think it was something like 720 something or other bytes that you required for the full font.
Mm-hmm.
And you could actually do this multiple times. So you were able to load fonts, multiple fonts, but switch between them simply by
pointing to a different place in memory, right?
Yeah, pointing to different places of memory.
Yeah.
And because these arrays were integral to the whole program, they didn't get accidentally written over that. So It was,
That's a good point, because you would know where in memory the array was.
yes, because
Because
in
of the pointer,
high-soft
right?
well, and because in high-soft Pascal, they had a keyword which was specifically used to locate the beginning of any array.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
So it was called adder.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then they had a command called a doke, which was like a double poke.
Yep. 16-bit poke.
Yeah,
That'd be
16-bit
handy.
poke.
Yeah.
Well, it had a 16-bit poke, so it was very it was very easy to get to the front of the the beginning of an array, and then you just poked into those bytes of memory that show the location of the font. So it was doc, whatever the address was, the start address of the array minus 256, and that was it.
There's that 256 number again.
Yes, exactly. So
Yeah,
David,
you had to do it. I don't know, but you had to do the minus 256.
It would be for the same reason,
yeah.
because it's setting that same system variable that expects it to be 256 lower.
But it worked perfectly, it worked perfectly.
Very cool. Very cool.
So
Well, there you have it. Running a business on the 1000 and then the 2068. I mean,
Under
emulated,
emulation
I
as well.
still-
If you have a DOS machine, I would figure it would probably be time to start running DOS programs like and not be using that emulator. But hey, if that's the best way to go.
Well,
Well,
I
I think
think throughout history, there's been a lot of systems like that. I want to say that I think the air traffic control system went through a few iterations of emulation of the older hardware to run the software on.
That is not something you'd want to mess up, is it? At all.
well, this
Nope.
is exactly it. I mean, if you've got a program that's been developed and you've been using it for 10, 20 odd years without any problems, why do you want to have to go through the whole thing and probably pay a developer to redo the whole thing? So you could use the updated operating system when you could use an emulator and still run your program. And for a while, Microsoft was changing DOS and or Windows every 2 years or so, which usually meant that the programs on the previous DOS were no longer working on the upgraded DOS. And I mean,
Well,
You
it's exactly that it's the redoing of it and the verification of it. So there are quite a few like scientific codes. People are still amazed. It's like, wait a minute, what do you mean it's still in Fortran? It's like, well, the thing is, it was validated to be correct. And so unless you're going to pay not only to convert the code, but also pay to have it revalidated, then it's staying the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you consider too, not that long ago, when COVID first hit, look at the rush there was for COBOL programmers, because the current version of the program that they had, which did run under COBOL, was not designed to handle the influx of applications that were coming in, and the programs that they were using were catching fire and leaking radiation and blowing up hither all over the place.
Yeah, there are also in embedded systems. I think there were quite a few early software systems embedded on like some fighter jets that, it just kept working. And so you kept maintaining that. And I mean, it wasn't that many years ago. There was like some, RFP that said, hey, we need some people who know some CDC some 6600 assembly language or something like this. And we're like, wait, what? You got something running?
Yeah, PDP 11, PDP 11 assembly.
Yeah, it was old.
Yeah, that NASA runs into that quite a bit with their spacecraft that are like out on the outer planets, and they need to change their program. They need to find people who can still program for like the 1802 and just weird processors that no one's used for 50 years.
Yeah. I just, as a matter of fact, I just read a little bit of a snippet in an article in one of the many, Sinclair newsletters about the NASA needing to reprogram the Voyager 2, was it? And they pushed out new code to it back in the 80s. And it, was possible because it only had 64K of RAM, and if they'd had 3 megs of RAM, it would have been, or 3 megs of memory space, it would have been impossible. Because
64K luxury.
I'm gonna Tim, I have a question for you just about spacecraft. Didn't you say you were into amateur astronomy?
Yeah.
Okay. So in your opinion, is the Voyager 2, is it 2 or 1? Has it left the solar system yet? Because there's like a controversy, like where's the end of the solar system? I know we're getting off subject here, but I like to do that.
I'll leave that to the experts because I really don't know.
Because in my opinion, yes, it's gone. But they're like, well, wherever gravity's still in effect, and it's still our solar system. I'm like, well, then it's never going to end,
Yeah, in that regard, there's no boundary, but is Pluto a planet?
Right.
Hey, no, it's not.
Speaking of Tim and astronomy, Tim scanned in, was it Eric Burgess's book? No, it was
his father and son. It was Eric and give me one second.
He scanned in this astronomy. There we go.
Yeah.
Eric and Howard.
And it's I uploaded it to archive. It's on the website now. So if you want
that looks to be a more updated version than the one I had, because the one I had was only Burgess, I believe.
Yeah, that was Celestial Basic, originally written for the Exidy Sorcerer. Then he converted it for, I want to say, the Apple II. But it isn't updated. And I do have a number of the programs in the book already typed in. So I think there's 1 or 2 that won't work now because they had a limit of somewhere in the 90s. Says this program worked from this date to that date, and that was in the 90s. But I do have a number of them typed in.
Those would be for what? Tracking like positions of planets or what?
Oh, it's for everything. Sunset, sunrise, Easter.
Yep, setting Julian date, rising times of the moon, right ascension, declination of moon, eclipses, phases of the moon.
Well, if it doesn't do astrology charts, I don't want it. Forget it.
There's also
it's a variety of things.
There were also
interesting is that a lot of the astrology stuff is still useful for astronomy because they use the same algorithm. So they need to know when a particular planet is in a certain position. Well, that's all astronomy. Just they use it for different things. So, but the procedures and how it works is all basic astronomy.
But there are also at least 2 other books written for the Spectrum, which deal with astronomy. And then there was one commercially available one. I think it was called Astronomy 2 or something like that. And then there was a French language book.
This is one for the Spectrum.
There we go. Okay.
Oh, and you were originally talking about that one.
Yeah.
Celestial Basic. Okay.
By Eric Burgess.
Yeah, and there was one written entirely in French by a fellow named Serrain, which was designed for the Spectrum. The only thing that was a bit confusing is he was living in the Southern Hemisphere, so all his programs were designed for people living in the Southern Hemisphere, so you had to do some additional calculation to make it work for the Northern
I think actually just look at the program upside down and it's right.
Turn your head upside down. Stand on your head.
Turn
view the
the, yeah.
results.
Turn the monitor upside
No,
down, something like
I
that.
think
Yeah,
it's
right.
Didn't it you reverse the polarity of the neutron flow?
If only Tim Horner were here, he could tell us.
Don't cross the streams though.
Anyway,
I think I've got soft copy of another one. So I bought the hard copy of the Astronomer's Software Handbook, but I think I've got a soft copy of another one.
So while Tim's looking, Jeff Z, I believe it's K. I think his last name starts with a K. Sent me a message a couple weeks ago saying that he had a copy of Beepers, which is a coil-bound hardware project book for the 1000 and 1500. And so he sent that to me to scan in, and that'll be up in a couple weeks.
Is this the programs that tell music, or
No, this is hardware interfacing. So if you want to, for instance, put a shift lock on your keyboard, that's in here. This is for the 1000 and 1500, although the shift lock would work for both. There's an analog to digital converter, which is a useful thing. The light pen won't work anymore because of the way LED, LCD screens work versus TVs.
I mean, it would work for me because I still use a CRT. So
okay, yeah, right, it would work for you.
Yeah.
There's an unbeatable burglar alarm. I suspect that someone might take issue with the unbeatableness of the burglar alarm.
Although it would be kind of embarrassing in 2022 to like go to jail and they're like, what kind of a burglar alarm do you have? And you find out, it's running on a Timex machine. You're like, crap.
Right. A 1000 no less. Oh, so actually, Adam, there is a beeper.
Okay.
Yeah, and looks like it uses a timer to generate a timer chip, that is, to generate the sound. But how does it? And it's just a single bit output. So my suspicion is that literally it just makes a beep sound. Yep, it just makes a beep sound based on.
So you can't even control its length.
You can control how long the width you can control within basic how long.
Okay, well,
I mean,
isn't that all the Spectrum does? I mean, it's just a beep sound, and they're able to do crazy
the Spectrum has pitch and length.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, people wrote tunes.
I know
using the
some of them are amazing
of the Spectrum, and figured out how to do more than one note.
Right, sort of simulated.
Simulated. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It sounds real to me though, so whatever. If it sounds real, it is real.
Well, I think a lot of machines.
Frogger that used a lot of that.
Did it?
Yeah, I believe it had an ongoing melody playing in the background, and it used the Spectrum sound chip. And that's one reason too that even in Canada, most of the programs available were designed for the Spectrum, and of course because of the difference between the TS-2068 configuration and the Spectrum configuration, especially anything that relied heavily on machine code, just wouldn't work.
Yep. So
how exciting, eh?
Getting back to Ryan's question, I'm going to ask Rick B. I know Rick's on a not great connection, so he might not be able to get on video again. But Rick, are you there? Can you tell us? Ryan, repeat your question.
What was my question? It was, one was, how did you use your computer back in your Timex Sinclair back in the day?
Yeah.
Programs, play games, and how do you use it now?
It looks like Rick.
Rick, can you hear us? You're muted for one thing.
Let's see if I can get him to unmute. Well, while we wait for Rick, how about Willie? Because I know Willie was very busy because I've read about Willie.
I'm late. You guys hear me?
Yeah. Willie, there's going to be an information dump to the email list when I finally get through all these articles.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, I used mine pretty much like I am right now, just learning and playing with it, and redoing programs, and most of the stuff I do is in BASIC. I've always wanted to learn the assembly stuff, and it seems like every time I take 2 steps forward, I take 4 steps backwards. So I'm still playing with that, but ain't making much progress. Just having fun. I don't know, dealing with the stuff we have now, and so yeah. I mean, I did run a BBS back in the day, and that was probably the biggest thing I would say I did with that, with my 2068. I did do some word processing, not a whole lot, because I helped with some of the newsletter stuff occasionally. I had several profile databases that I used, but it was mostly my record collection and things like that. So, which I wished I had those now, quite frankly, and I can't find those.
The records or the databases?
The database. I got the records, but I can't find the database. I'm like, dang, I'd hate to have to recreate this thing. So anyway, but that's. I mean, I just enjoy playing around with that thing. So I mean, I'm doing it all the time, and I found somebody. I think it was Neil. Sent me a utility the other day. I don't even know. Actually, I think his name's in the utility, but it renumbers BASIC and takes gives you the variable list, a couple other little things it does. It'll compress your BASIC programs.
Oh, cool.
And that is really cool, because I'm going through a lot of my old stuff and renumbering it, make it look like I did do what I was doing.
Willie, what do you mean when it would compress your BASIC program? What do you mean by that?
So you go in and you renumber your BASIC program, and then it's got an option where you go through after you renumber and you compress it. So it goes in and it takes all of the go-to statements and puts a go-to val with that number. So you're saving a couple bytes every time it does that. Well, if you got a lot of go-tos and jumps and things like that, you can save quite a bit of space, by doing that. So I play around with a little bit just to see how it does or what it came up with. So it's kind of neat. But I can't remember. I'm pretty sure Neil sent me that. He has a whole bunch of utilities and stuff he inherited. So,
Was it perhaps called Time Machine?
No, I've got Time Machine, but I don't have the directions, so I don't really know how to use that yet. I've still got to download some directions on that and figure out what all it will do. But no, it's just
what is Time
basic.
Machine? I mean, other than something you used to go back and forth in time.
Yes, exactly. No, it's a compiler.
There's the English version. It's so I'm trying to remember. So Time Machine by Novelsoft was a port to the 2068 of the Spectrum version. I want to say it was HiSoft Basic, and you can find the user guide for HiSoft Basic. Pretty sure that's it. I'll go do a little looking in a minute and confirm that. So it was a port. So the HiSoft Basic should work. I've had problems getting Time Machine for the 2068 to work. The version of online doesn't seem to work, but we do have the directions for it.
I think the version that I've got is a Spectrum version, but I could be wrong.
If I remember correctly, though, that one of the problems with Time Machine and also with the HiSoft C is it was integer math only.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Maybe, yeah. So anyway, I mean, that's pretty much what I do. I mean, it's, I kind of want to say it's just a big toy for me, but at the same token, I like trying to do something practical with it. That's why I did the alarm thing and the relay thing, because I just thought it was neat. I got tons of that stuff that I could do with other devices, of course, and things, but I wanted to physically do it with the 2068. So that's why I kind of got into those two projects.
Willie, did you have multiple 2068s when you were running the bulletin board system?
Yeah, I had I had 3 or 4 2068s back then.
Okay.
And we had one dedicated solely for the for the bulletin board. I mean, it ran 24/7, and we had a 2068 and a 2040 printer hooked up to all that with one of the radio or one of the Timex modems. 20, what is that? 2048 or
2050.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had one of those on there, and it just kind of sat in the corner and did its thing. And I just went over and updated every once in a while, changed the messages on it to reflect whatever the meeting times and things like that were. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
I have a question about that bulletin board. I'm guessing you had, could people like I mean, was it hooked up to a disk drive? For one thing, I guess it had to have been, right?
It was hooked up to a floppy drive, yes.
Okay. So could people upload files and download something? No,
we never really got to the file stage. They just did more like email, basically, is what we did. But yeah, we never crossed the bridge over to the file stage. We had talked about it and that kind of stuff. We probably, the interesting part about that, and of course I'm going way back thinking, there was probably, I had that thing running for probably 2.5, almost 3 years. And I want to say we only had about 60 to 65 people that actually used it on semi-regular basis.
That's a lot of people, actually.
So,
I mean, you said only, but that seems like a lot.
Well, I didn't think it was that many at the time. Maybe it was. I don't know. I mean, of course, back then there was a BBS on every corner. So, but I got a lot. I got a ton of like one hits, people just checking things out or whatever and things like that. I can't tell you how many of those we had. But as far as actual one, I want to say Sinclair Timex ZX81 people, the most I can remember our count was 60, 65-ish, somewhere around there. But it was still enough that kept me interested, and it was a lot of fun. So
you just had the one modem, right? So only one person could call in at a time.
I only had one line. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And this is the bulletin board that you and Paul wrote?
Correct. Yeah.
Cool. Wow.
It was neat though. I mean, we had a lot of fun with it. And then there was a couple more. There's a couple more. I think Tiny Board. Yeah. Actually, Tiny Board really speared the ideal. I can't remember the guy that wrote Tiny Board, but he sent us a copy.
It was like a husband-wife couple or something.
Yeah. So they actually sent us a couple. We tried it, but it kept Tiny Board kept crashing. I had a lot of problems keeping it up. I mean, it literally was crashing quite a bit. I mean, if you called in with the wrong parity bit or something like that, the system couldn't handle it, but it would lock the system up. So that's when we started writing our own. We took some of the ideals that was in Tiny Board. And after we got ours wrote, we sent him a copy of it. I don't know which one he ended up using in the end, but and then of course we tweaked ours because I use John Oliger stuff a lot. I mean, I still to this day I love the John Oliger system, and so we tweaked it to use that so that we had more memory for messages and things like that. We were able to dump them onto the disk and load them up, and it was so fast. People behind the scenes didn't know what was happening.
That's crazy.
So it really extended the message base from 100 messages to well over 1,000. So
you know who else on today's Zoom meeting ran a bulletin board, or at least was the sysop for a bulletin board? Was David.
Cool.
I've learned that by reading again the skajillion newsletters. I think it was called Sir Clive's. David, what was your bulletin board system called? Wonder if his telephone stole his microphone. David, what was your bulletin board system called?
I'm sorry?
The bulletin board system that you ran briefly.
I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm not quite hearing you clearly.
Oh, okay. Do you remember that you ran a bulletin board system when you were involved?
Oh, yeah. The bulletin board. Yeah, that was something that Michael Dove and I worked together on. It was called
Sir Clive something.
Sir Clive's Castle.
Castle. Yes, that's right.
Castle.
Yeah, cool.
Somebody was asking about astronomy programs.
Oh, look at that.
Hmm.
En français.
And the programs are very detailed, and so is the explanations. And there are some of them that actually use the graphic function.
Oh, cool.
So that is interesting. And then this is this guy here.
Wow. Wow. There was a lot of interest in astronomy and using your Sinclair to solve for the position of Jupiter, as it were.
Astronomy on the ZX spectrum and Spectrum Plus.
Yeah.
Ralph was real big into that stuff back in the day. He did some stuff like that with his 2068.
Hey, David, who's the author of both of those books, please?
Okay, astronomy. This one here.
Yep.
Is by a fellow named Lucien Strebler. Strebler.
Maybe you can put their names in the chat. That might make it a little easier.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. Let me see.
For both of those, please.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure if I know how to use the chat.
Click on chat and start typing away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aha, thanks.
I'm just looking them up on Google too.
What was the what was the first
Oh,
one
there
you
we
mentioned,
go.
the French?
It was Guy something. Did you get it, Tim?
I got the first one in chat.
Okay. Well, I'm not entirely positive that I spelled it right because Google's not turning up. Of course, you know, I'm searching the English Google.
Right.
Let's try astronomy. Change this. Let's see. David, can you spell Lucius's last name again?
Just a minute. You should. I'm almost.
To fill up some dead time here, is anyone using their 2068 to connect via chat?
Oh yeah.
Lucian. Okay.
I've used the QL for chat.
Oh, have you?
Like IRC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wrote a proof of concept IRC chat program a while back, and then Dilwyn Jones of Wales picked it up and really made it. So basically, it was like I wrote something that's like, I don't know, 7K. This one's like 50K or something. It was size. It was so he basically allowed chat to do the full spectrum of the commands, whereas mine just did the barely anything just to get in.
Oh, wow. And how long ago was that, Tim? Because IRC is like, I mean, I feel like it faded away.
I was saying probably the last. I think I did it prior pandemic, but I'm not too sure. It might have been after the pandemic.
Oh.
It was called QL IRC.
Okay.
Again, my something was just a proof of concept to have fun with it. And then Dylan goes, "Oh, this is neat," and he really expanded it. The last he never officially finished it, but if you go onto the QL forums, I think 1.98 was the last version of IRC. It's QL IRC, all one word, QL capitalized.
Okay. All right.
Written in super basic, not C or anything, just something old super basic, and it worked pretty good.
It can't be plain if it's got the word super in it. You can't call it plain basic. You know?
Super plain basic.
So,
wow. Yeah, I can. I mean,
yeah, I would use it occasionally. It worked. I would test it. The nice thing was my evening was basically in the middle of the night for the UK guys. So I get on chat and do things, and they never, hey, what's this going on? They're like, they only get it later. The fact that I was actually doing something. Aha, someone found it.
Yeah. 1.998, it says.
Okay. And that's probably from Dilwyn because he was running QPC.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I found that. Where did I find that?
You probably when he
On
announced
his
it.
website,
Yeah.
his Sinclair blog.
So
Yeah.
haven't done. I know there is for the ZX81 ZX Foxy. It's a web browser for the ZX81.
No, not a web browser. No,
Come
no,
on.
no.
Something like that. It's,
No. I don't even think you could run something like links on there. Like
so it
ZX.
requires ZXpand, and I think it runs, of course, an emulator. But for hardware, I think it runs ZXpand, and there's an extra option ZXpand to do Ethernet. So,
Oh, wow.
but I think it's ZX Foxy.
Okay, let's see.
I used to use a program called ZTerm quite a lot. However, to run the program, you required the ZTerm OS64 chip.
Are you thinking of? It was Spectrum 60. No, the Spectrum 64 was software, but there was a terminal emulator that ran using the Zebra.
Yeah,
64.
and it was called ZTerm. And
Okay.
in fact, I sent you I sent you a copy of the manual, which I retyped because the manual itself was written in Mies type, if I can call it that. You know, I mean, one of these things where you almost have to use a microscope to read it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I retyped the whole thing so it could be read by people with normal eyesight. Yeah, I did send it to you, Dave.
Yeah, I'm just getting to it right now. Oh yeah, ZTerm 64. That's right. Yep. And why don't I have the manual linked? Well, I've been prompted.
who's running that site? That's what I want to know.
Right. What kind of half-assery is this? So and as it turns out, there was a guy named Kurt Casby also wrote a bulletin board system.
Task board.
Yep. And Larry Kenny's MaxCom terminal program was also a bulletin board program, from what I understand, in a different mode.
One of the things I had a problem with, and I've never run any terminal software on my Timex machines or anything, but I used to like use an Amiga back in the 90s and even in the early 2000s. And when you get on the bulletin boards with that, unless you had a terminal emulator that supported ANSI, I mean, things look like crap. So how did it work if you were on a Timex machine? Did you have to stick mostly to like BBSs that were Timex only, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, in the 80s, it was, we were running ASCII, so it was an even smaller restricted character set. It was just text, and all that ANSI stuff came in the very late.
Well, ANSI, sure, but I mean, I'm referring to like all the other Commodore and Atari had, there was a Tasky and Petsky and all that. Did the TRS-80, not TRS-80, did Timex have?
We had a lot of Commodore people and even some Atari people and stuff like that were getting on our website all the time. All it was just ASCII. You just had to have the right parity bit and all that.
Yeah.
And it worked fine because it's the same ASCII on any machine. So we had a
Yeah, I
lot of
think-
different kinds of machines that got into us and asking questions of what's a Timex.
Oh, okay.
Well, one of the very first applications I made using Pascal too was I very quickly learned how to make lookup tables. And I would go onto these bulletin boards, especially when I was looking for information. I used to, what's the capture the text, buffer the text. I'm not quite sure what the term is anymore. But yeah, then when you try to look at it, it looked like crap. So, but what I did was I developed a number of lookup programs that would just go through everything byte by byte and try to look up, Petsky 632 is actually ASCII something or other, it just went through the whole text like that. and it did a good job of cleaning up everything so you had readable text. A lot of times I just skipped the graphics unless it was done in 7-bit ASCII. And the other thing that was complicating things was that different bulletin boards used to use different symbols or codes for end of line. So some of them were using L-feed line return, some were using only line feed, some were only using carriage return. And then you got these odd bulletin boards, I think it was IBM operated, where every line was terminated with a double naught or a double null.
So did we answer your question, Adam?
I never have a question that needs answering. Don't pay attention to me. What are you talking about?
I think all those other than the ZX81 1000 had the common 7-bit ASCII, and the special characters are all in the high numbers.
Mm-hmm.
If Ryan, if you don't mind, I'd like to be more specific and maybe ask a general question. When did people here who were using their Timex systems or Sinclair systems in the 80s? When did you finally pack it out and upgrade to another system? I mean, what's the general? Was it the mid 80s, late 80s, like right away after Timex pulled out?
Well, Willie's, zooming in through a 2068.
Yeah, I mean, I did. It was actually quite a while. I messed with mine for, I mean, shoot, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so. And then there was a period of time here that I had everything put in boxes and put in the garage. And I just simply didn't have any free time, more or less, to do anything. And it went on, it probably sat in the garage, I mean, I'm guessing a good 18, 20 years. And then one day I'm online. I mean, actually, it's Dave's website what brought me back. I'll be honest with you. I found his by accident. I found his website, and I started going through it. And then, of course, then I started getting all fuzzy and warm about my 2068 again. Went out, unpacked all this stuff, got the cobwebs out of it, and to my surprise, everything still worked just as it did when I put it away. And I was just totally shocked that as old as it. I mean, even on the back here, you guys were kidding me the other day about I'm running so much stuff on the original power supply and all that. I actually felt bad, and I went and ordered me some new regulators. So I figured, well, maybe they're right. I better upgrade my machine a little bit.
That's peer pressure, That's called peer pressure.
I know, man. I felt it. They got me. So yeah, I ordered me some regulators, and I'll be changing those here for too long. But that's really, for me, that's what happened. I mean, but I'll be honest with you, I'm just reliving my youth. I'm back in the day, I didn't have a lot of money to throw on these things. I mean, it took, I'd gotten married young, we, buying houses, all this kind of thing. And I didn't have money to play around with this stuff that much, even though it really wasn't that expensive. To me at the time, it was. It felt like it was very expensive. And, now I look things have went up a little bit on them, but unless you've got some real crazy stuff out there that you do see, somebody thinking that they're, made out of pure gold. But I can now get a lot of the little pieces and stuff that I wanted back then, and just play around and have fun. And that's pretty much what I'm doing. I'm reliving.
What did you pick up? You said there was stuff you wanted. So what have you picked up recently?
I mean, I've got, parallel printers, which I had one back then. It just wasn't a very good one. But
what kind of printer did you say?
Parallel Centronics.
Oh, parallel.
Dot matrix.
Yeah, sure.
I've got a couple of those now, and I a slew of floppy drives that I couldn't afford all that stuff back then. I had a few that I just kind of bounced between machines, and now I got them laying everywhere. I got at least 2 sets for each machine, so in case something happens. But and just pretty much anything I want for it, I just get it. So,
Willie, do you have any of those Centronics interface to one of your 2068s?
Yeah, I use the Oliger.
The
So
oligarch. Okay.
Yeah, I use the oligarch because he's got all the print drivers stuff built into the oligarch
In the
disk
ROM.
interface.
Yeah.
So I don't have to load anything into memory. It's all already there. I just go in and set up my parameters and all that, and away it goes. So
Wow.
yeah, I actually built 3 of those over this past, I don't know, 6 months or so. So but yeah, that's just kind of what I cut my teeth off when you think of easy way to get your programs in and out. To me was the JLO with the 3.5-inch disc, and I can't remember the day I finally graduated from the 5 1/4s. Those things were just such a pain. I mean, they worked and they did what
Yeah.
you wanted them to do, but you know, the 3.5s are so much easier, and you put so much more on one, and it's just a totally cool thing. So, and I need a drink. To those days, I don't know. I'm really hoping somebody comes out. I was reading the thing you downloaded or you just bought, Adam, for the guest speaker we had. Yeah, I was reading about that. If they ever come out with one of those for the 2068, that would be cool. So
honestly, I haven't even taken it out of the bag, so I will do a live unopening. I got it yesterday afternoon, and I just opened the box, and let's see.
But I mean, to do, I've got all that stuff for the Spectrum.
I don't know. It's got a little thing on here, and then I got 3 adapters. I got one for the, let's see, the Atari 8-bit.
Thank you.
The Odyssey 2, and which I don't have an Odyssey 2, but a local friend of mine does, and for of course, the best system ever made, the Bally. So
The what now?
Bally.
Yeah. So
I was reading about all that and all the different machines that it covered, and all. I thought, wow, this is pretty slick. And
yeah,
I'm hoping that she does have time to develop one for the native 2068. Then I might jump on the bandwagon. But so far, I haven't found anything other than something like the DivX that they have for the Spectrum, which is awesome, by the way. It does work great. But I like using my 2068 in native mode. I just always have. I don't know why. I guess I'm just being hard-headed, but that's what I want. I want that same feature for my native 2068. Then I might get away from the JLO a little bit.
I know that Evie was developed. Well, she got the 2068, right? She showed it to us on the last meeting. So I think she's probably getting around to that sooner or later. And you got yours quick, Adam, because I know I ordered mine like back in April, and I just got it, a couple of weeks ago.
Well, now you know who she likes better. So.
Well, I guess.
If I may ask a slightly off.
But mine's red.
Question,
Yours, okay.
If I may ask a slightly off-topic question, does anybody know of a USB 5 1/4 external drive? I've seen the 3.5-inch drive, but I haven't never seen a 5 1/4.
No.
Now I think they make 5 1/4 through USB.
Oh. Yeah.
Too old.
No, I've never seen it. Right, because
I was just hoping.
Yeah, right.
Now, I wonder if you crack open a 3.5-inch, the USB to 3.5-inch drive, if the interface in it might fit on a 5 1/4.
Through
You
one
probably
of
need
The
external
software,
power.
though.
Yep.
The software probably
power
wouldn't
is
work
right.
either.
So.
Yeah. I mean, you need at least.
Yeah, there's probably somebody out there that's done that, I would imagine.
Because I know that the cables I used on my QL for 5 1/4 also worked on 3.5. I didn't have to make any new cables; they just worked. But I did have external power on both 3.5 and 5 1/4.
Yeah,
that's the way the JLO is. Everything's external power supply, but you can use the same cable.
Yeah.
And I know back in the day too, I used to get a lot of the combo drives, right? They were a 5 1/4 inch size, right? A half height size, but they had the 3.5 and the 5 1/4 in that same, and they just used one connector. Right?
Yeah, I saw
And
those. I never
split it
actually
out.
used one though. That's cool.
Yeah, I used to use those all the
on
time.
eBay. Yeah, there's a few of those on eBay. I saw them.
Yeah, I used to build IBMs back in the day, and it was just not only a space saver, but you could get both sizes in the one.
And try ED drives.
is that the we sell obscure stuff people?
What does that mean? That's the internet.
No, I just say this because somebody, I think Tim probably posted this to the groups at one point about, somebody asked, like where to get 5 1/4 inch floppy disks or something, and they, I feel like it was Tim that Swenson that posted.
And you mean the media?
Yeah, the media.
Okay.
And then so what was the URL, Tim? Do you remember?
I don't remember, unless you're talking about weird stuff, but that's been closed for
No, it's not weird stuff. There's a company that carries old media and old drives.
Isn't that just eBay?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Do you mean like old stock, like new old stock? Is that the kind of thing?
I think so. I think so.
They do have a lot of media on eBay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They
It'll
do.
come
You
back.
can
Pricey.
get about anything.
But
The only thing I
EV
can't find is the little waffle drive. I can't find those anywhere.
So and another thing I read is there was a point at which they stopped making them. It was like around 1989. And so
Which one's the what?
both
Oh, really?
both A&J got out and
Okay.
the wafer drive people got out because they couldn't get them anymore.
Yeah.
The
Apparently,
Exatron,
I have searched and searched and
Yep.
searched and can't find those things anyplace.
Exatron and BASF stopped making them.
Yeah, they weren't that common to begin with. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but the ED drives were 2.88 megabyte for IBM, but on the QL they formatted to 3.2 meg. So on a QL,
you're
they're
talking
basically mini hard drives.
Yeah, you're talking extended density. Okay,
Sorry, I thought
that's
you were
what you
saying,
mean by ED.
That's why I've always called it with ED. And I remember, I think, no, actually, when I got rid of my QL, they still had ED drives on them. So
Yeah, I think in the IBM world, I think they called them UHD, ultra high density. I think
okay,
UHD drives.
but 3.2 meg, they were mini
Yeah.
hard drives for a QL.
And they didn't click to death.
They didn't do what? Click
They didn't
to death?
click to death like zip
What do you
zip
mean?
disks.
Oh, yes.
Zip
yes,
disks had the click of death.
Yeah.
Um,
Never had that
yeah,
happen to
but
mine, but yeah.
By the time those came out, those 288 drives, that was late in the floppy era. They really didn't
Mhm.
sell a lot of those.
Yeah. I
They
think
were hard to
only
find.
IBM manufactured those actually. Is that right? Does anyone know? Not that it matters, I suppose.
No,
Yeah,
I think
they only came
TIAC
from
probably
IBM.
did.
Yeah.
Or really? I'm sure that TIAC
Well,
or
I
whoever
think
made the
maybe
drives
they
back
were.
then.
The IBM might have been the one that actually bought them from TIAC, but I think, there weren't that many companies out there. But I saw them. That people always say, yeah, they're IBM drives, but
Yeah.
they might have actually been made by TIAC, then resold by IBM
Yeah.
or somebody.
Mhm.
So
Wasn't there also something called a Z drive at one time, though I don't think it would have been, you would have been able to use it on a Sinclair.
I remember,
Sinclair
so
machine.
for external drives, you could get like SideQuest made some.
Yep.
There was, who made the zip? Was that also SideQuest?
No.
Omega.
Omega.
There's
There
also
you
the Bernoulli drives too. The Bernoulli.
Yep, they were earlier. They were large drives.
They were.
Mhm.
They
You
were
had from Omega,
couldn't
you
trust
had
those.
Zip and Jazz.
Mhm.
When I was at SGI, I specialized in supporting anything that was external to the unit. So external tape drives, hard drives, zip drives, Jazz drives, bunch of different tape formats they used on them. So I remember getting the whole, they had the 8mm Mammoth. You had all these different IBM ones and DST and DLT and yeah.
Wasn't there also an external drive at one time that actually used 10-inch floppies? I seem to
8-inch?
remember
8-inch.
once when
Yeah,
I was
8-inch.
Yeah.
Well, the first floppies were 8-inch.
Yes.
Then mini floppies were 5 1/4, and then micro were 3-inch and 3.5.
Yes.
And the 8-inch floppies actually stored Omega data back in like 77 or
Yeah.
whatever it was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I used an 8-inch floppy with Xerox machines. We had some Xerox machines in the Pentagon, and they used 8-inch floppies. I had a couple machines at college that used 5 1/4 hard sectored. So you had to buy specially designed hard sectored floppies to work with them.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
but did
actually
the drive
eventually turned
somewhat
those into
look like a
toasters.
toaster?
Say that
Sorry?
again.
I remember one of the jobs I was working, they had a disk drive, and I was told it was a 10-inch disk drive, and the whole affair looked somewhat like a toaster.
That could have been a hard disk.
There were disk packs, which were a plastic container with multiple platters of hard drives for larger mainframe systems or mini computers. Those were terribly expensive. But I think 8-inch was the first floppy, and it was, I think, I'm not aware of anything bigger than that.
No, I think you're right.
I wanted to bring up something that David sent to me yesterday. He actually sent me an email in the morning because I begged him to. That was like, send me something that has some basic programs that has video art in it. And this was like, I think I made this request on Thursday, and he managed to do it before the meeting today. And I actually typed in a basic program, which maybe I'll share. I don't know. David, do you think it's worth sharing? Or
yeah, absolutely. I've got it running. If you want.
Oh, if you have it running, do it. You're better at this than me.
Oh yeah. It's still running. It's hard to tell because it's moving so slowly.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me just hit share. There we go. And it's right. It's drawing out a circle from the right hand corner now, but it starts.
So
out...
it's random, but it's not until after it finishes drawing the screen. It clears the screen, but it's in fact it's going to get almost to the top in a minute, and then it does this really strange effect, and that's when it looks cool. And then it clears that, and then it continues to draw randomly again, and then it does this weird effect where it looks cool. So you can't really, kind of have to see it full screen, but it's only a few lines of code too, which is, there it goes.
This is the oh wow.
And now it's gonna, on mine at least, it does I think that looks cool. Yeah. Woo, look at that. Okay. That's it. So that's the effect.
So
we saw the whole program now. It does it randomly, but it's I think it's what, let's see, 1, 2, 3, about 10 lines of code, besides if you don't count the rem statements.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, is this, I use the ZEsarUX 9. Is this special menu part of 10?
Yeah, the stuff on the right. Yeah. It's 10. I have it turned on, but you can turn it off.
Yeah, I've never actually used that stuff. I use 10 as well.
I just have problems with the author, the author not wanting to write a manual. I'm like, well, how much do I understand how this works? Just work through the menus.
It is challenging, and I have managed to figure out how to do things like create a tap file and save, and I should probably put all the things that I've learned into some kind of
after Ryan demonstrated Fuse. I might go try Fuse and see how
Fuse
it works.
Is really nice. Fuse is really nice. Yeah.
So this one's and what I hate about this one is you try and close it by the closed window.
Yeah.
It won't let you.
It doesn't.
You have to go in and say exit.
He hasn't implemented what is it, Command Q or something like that.
I don't know, but it's kind of a pain. So
it is. Yes, there's some issues with it.
So I just put on my to-do list to do Fuse later today.
Also with Fuse, there's a Fuse utils that come, well, I guess it depends on how you get it, but you want to make sure you have the Fuse utilities, because I've been using, in there you've got list basic, which takes a tap file and then gives you the basic of all the text file.
I think I've got the utils stored installed on my netbook. I had it on my laptop, but I didn't install it when I got my desktop. So I need to install Fuse there and the utils. Last time every time I tried Fuse, it's like really tiny, like, inch by inch on my screen. So
well, you do have to play with the settings and make sure you save them to, and I know with the 2068, there's like, it has like a Timex TV mode that I like.
Yeah.
But like the Spectrum one starts out by default very small, and you have to go in there and say 2x, and you kind of want to make. I think I keep forgetting to save that setting, and I haven't figured. I don't think there's a command line switch for windowed mode, so I always have to start it and then go into the menu and say full screen to toggle it back to windowed mode, and then you have to press escape to get your mouse cursor back for some reason.
And the other option for Linux would be running Warievo under DOSBox, but that's not that great. I mean, decent application, but DOSBox has issues.
I want to ask Jeff Burrell. his origin story, because I don't recall off the top of my head if he's ever told us, and certainly not when Ryan was here. Jeff, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Tell us how
okay.
you got into the Sinclair world.
Well, I was in the Air Force stationed in the UK in the early 80s and saw the ZX81 advertised and bought it and was playing around with it. And it was mostly just to get computer literate, because the last time I had programmed anything was back in college when I was at the University of Minnesota. We programmed Fortran 4, none of this Fortran 77 garbage on the CDC mainframe there. But
And that's from 1904, right? Fortran 1904.
Yeah, because Fortran 3 was
Adam.
1903.
But so at any rate, I got fairly proficient at BASIC and wrote a few programs for myself. One to emulate a TATS modem that was part of the satellite communication kit. So, and I kept that up, got my 2068 when I went to Offutt, and was working at the AFSATCOM Master Control Center. By that time, I'd learned enough BASIC so that I could reprogram the ephemeris calculation program they were using for satellites that officially didn't exist. But the program was written so it would step the satellite through its orbit and find the apogee by doing that. And each satellite took, it was about an hour. So essentially, I just went through the code and also learned enough about orbital mechanics so that I could get the runtime down from, I think it was like an hour and a half to like 5 minutes to print out the ephemeris. So
What was your AFSC?
It was 304X, 30476. So I was a satellite communications guy.
I was a 4925.
What was that?
Com computer.
Okay.
What are you all talking about?
I started out as
Adam. We have like a critical mass of former Air Force folks on this group.
Well, remember
Tim Ward.
Yeah. And then when there was another user group. I was part of the OS2 user group here in Albuquerque, and there was, I think it was I forget his name, military guy. He was heading that up. It was pretty common because I guess, they were exposed to computers in the military back earlier than a lot of the people.
IBM OS2? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that brings back.
Well, I got my computer way before I went active.
So Jeff, how did you get to the 2068, or did you?
I did. And what happened is that after I'd moved to Offutt, I was working with a guy who had a 2068. He decided that he wanted to move on to CPM. And since I'd already had a 1000, I decided to purchase his 2068 and pretty much played around with it. I was transferred into a field training detachment and became an instructor on the E4B satellite communication system. So I used my 2068 to write some software to help me develop lesson plans and things like that.
You're leaving out the part about war games, it seems like, on your 2068, but whatever. I'll ignore it.
Well, no, he did mention, the satellites that did not officially exist.
I remember. So I think the other place other than Offutt was the E4B also sat at Wright-Patterson for a while when I was there.
Oh, I have memories about people that came from Wright-Patterson. They're not good ones. I was an airplane mechanic back before I trained into electronics, and they closed down the B-52 wing at Wright-Patterson. That transferred a bunch of people over, and for 3 years I had to hear about how they did things at Wright-Pat versus how we did things at Grand Forks. So,
all right. Yeah, I got to Wright-Pat way after the B-52s left. They had a test wing there and some C-21s, and that was pretty much it.
C-21s, wow.
They had basically a few corporate jets for the bigwigs to fly around. So
Yeah, Z21s. Wow. What is, I don't know. What are you talking about?
all right, so my first AFSC in the Air Force was 00005, student pilot. Didn't quite work out, so I came up with 4925 computer officer. So hence I like to look at planes a lot.
Hey, here's a book recommendation for us old guys.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
Awesome.
man.
Oh wow, 1 second.
That looks good.
You can't stump Tim.
You can't stump Tim. Tim's got all the books. Yeah.
Oh,
That's not
good.
That's not
Well,
Fortran.
Well, it looks like the old book. It's a history of. It's interesting.
yeah.
That's fun.
So
Well, my
actually,
Fortran is
how
bigger
far
than
back
yours,
does
eh?
it date? Fortran dates back to the late 50s or early 60s or what?
57.
57?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, a guy at work gave me some output of his code to work on, and the sample output page I noticed at the top had a date, 1976.
When was this?
So when I was working on some stuff, and so he had this code that he worked on back at Rocketdyne a long time ago when I was 10 or something.
Okay.
A couple of years back, I met a grad student he was doing statistics or some numerical, something like that, in data sets. And he had to write some sort of a program. And his professor told me he had to write it in Fortran 77, not Fortran 95 or whatever, Fortran 77, to kind of give him a feel for how it worked, I guess. So I said, good luck.
That's student abuse.
Well, that was a luxury compared to the before that, though. You didn't have like if then else,
But this is only like 3 or 4 years ago. I met this grad student. So
oh man.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Not such a luxury, yeah.
But hey, GNU's Fortran should work as a Fortran 77 compiler, and there's lots of books out there. So
Wait. So
Tim, I wanted to bring up something David sent to me yesterday. Let's see if I can. I printed out some stuff he sent.
oh my god,
And-
yes.
Yes. How
That's
could we
right.
not? Actually, now it's time to change my glasses. Oh my gosh. All right.
You're getting old, Adam.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna. Yeah, I won't say the date, but soon coming up, I'll be 50. So let's see.
review mirror for me.
So let's see. In a newsletter called Ramp Top, the late fall 1994 issue, on pages 3 and 5, there's an article. Oh wait, oh shoot, I'm looking at the wrong one. Jeez, Adam, jeez, get it together. Get it together. Here we go.
It's
Here we
the
go.
glasses.
Yeah, it's the glasses don't help. It's stupidity here. All right. So also in Ram Top, from fall 95 on page 6, there's an article called The Dayton Trip by James G. DePoy. And he's talking about a show that was in Dayton. And Tim probably knows where I'm going with this, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Ringing any bells, Tim?
Of course.
Okay.
Well, so there was a computer show there, but we had Hamvention. It was a lot of the Midwest Sinclair folks would show up from people from Indianapolis, from Milwaukee, from Cleveland, would come down. A couple people from Nashville area would come down. You guys talking about the picnics or the whatever?
Yeah,
event?
I want to just read a couple of sentences here. It's how he closes it out, and then there's some pictures, including one of your daughter and wife, apparently. So anyway, it says there seemed to be less people than 2 years ago at the show. That made it a bit less crowded. Another high point, he says high point, was the cookout at Tim Swenson's house. And then he mentioned some people who were also there. Maybe these people ring some bells. Bob Swager from SMUG showed up, and even Gary Ganger was there for a little while.
Gary Ganger is from Dayton.
Yeah. So and then I guess he says you're going to be moving away after not too long after that to go somewhere else. So eventually you did.
So I think we held that 4 different times. I mentioned before, the story behind it was the year before I moved to Dayton, I went to Dayton for the computer show with Manny Quintero of Virginia. We jumped in a car together, and I get there and we sit down with all the other Sinclair folks. We're at a restaurant, but there's no chance to mingle. You see, you got 6 people per table. There's a bunch of other tables. You want to meet somebody else, you really can't. It's a restaurant. So, and there's no other place to meet. So I'm like, okay, I'm here now. I don't want to do that. I want to meet everybody. So for minimal cost, I held a barbecue or cookout. I rented chairs for like $20 at MWR, bought a neighbor's picnic table, buy the burgers and buns. Gary Ganger would go out and buy a 24-pack or case or whatever of low-end sodas and some ice and bring it to the house. And it was fairly inexpensive, but it got a chance for everyone to kind of meet and greet each other. Doug Laverne of Nashville, or actually he was from, not Nashville, what's the other one in Oak Ridge? He came up and actually brought his steel drum and was playing it, the ones you hammer it. So yeah, it got to be rather popular. It's kind of nice.
So something I was a little unclear of in the article was like, this was, I guess it wasn't a national show, but it was like a statewide show, kind of like.
So Hamvention, so there's 2 events. There was Hamvention and the Dayton, another one. So Dayton Microcomputer Association held a meeting, a show. I can't remember which one it was, but it really did draw a lot of people from the Midwest Sinclair folks. It was like, hey, they had no Sinclair show, but this big show happening in Dayton. It's got a lot of people there, not just Sinclair folks. It was a bunch of other computer stuff, indoors, outdoors, thousands of people. So like, hey, let's just
thousands of people, or is that?
Yeah. It was a big event
because it was more than Sinclair.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I remember going in. So I had an Epson Geneva, which was a little laptop, and I walked into this to go visit Mr. NICAD, who sold nothing but NICAD batteries. And I asked him, "You got an Epson Geneva battery?" He goes, "Oh yeah, right here." I'm like, "Whoa!" He actually knew what the Epson Geneva was.
I don't even know what that is, but that's probably off topic.
But it was a big show between the Hamvention and the DMA computer show. Thousands of people there. They filled the parking lot with flea market type stuff. Inside was the bigger vendors. Yeah, there was a lot of people there. And so we just had also the Dayton Microcomputer Association had a computer museum that Gary Ganger managed, and I came along and helped him a couple of times to man the booth and everything, and put a few other machines of mine. And then close by where the Sinclair folks kind of grouped together as far as their booths go. Mostly it was Mechanical Affinity and a few others, but mostly Mechanical Affinity. And then people busy from out of town to come and, buy stuff from them.
What does that mean, Mechanical Affinity?
I'm sorry?
That was the name of the company. It was Frank Davis and Paul Holmgren.
Yep.
Paul was from Indianapolis. Yeah. Frank was from Peru, Indiana. Paul and I, that we went to the second Rhode Island show. Paul said, "Hey, I want to go. I'll pick you up." So he drives from Indianapolis to Dayton, picks me up. We drive all the way to Rhode Island. His concept was to drive straight through. So he had a little ice box with stuff for making sandwiches, so we didn't have to stop for food. And then he just had it was a bench seat in the back of his van. So he slept there while I was driving for like 5 or 6 hours. He had a nice nap. And we drove straight from Indianapolis, picking up Dayton, straight through Rhode Island, and did the exact same thing on the way back. What was worse for him, though, was we get to middle of Pennsylvania. He calls his wife, say, "Hey, this is where I'm at." She goes, "Yeah, my mother just had like a heart attack or something like that." And she's in New Jersey. So he drives like a madman from Pennsylvania to Ohio, drops me off, drives to Indianapolis, doesn't sleep, and turns around and drives all the way back to New Jersey.
Oh my God.
Poor guy.
Tim, I have those pictures. Do you mind if I share them?
No, go ahead. I don't know if I've seen them or not.
All right. And speaking of Paul, so Paul is in the upper right picture. It says here, Paul Holmgren sells a QL out of the back of his station wagon at Tim Swenson's house.
That's so awesome.
And then below, Tim Swenson's wife watches her daughter react to all the Sinclair enthusiasts at their house.
That's my oldest. What's the other photograph there?
Well, it says here the author of the 2068 emulator. Now, is that
Watson? Keith Watson?
I think
guy with
that's
the
Keith
laptop
Watson.
like
Exactly.
Watson.
He's not the author, but Keith extended Z80, the emulator, to
he
do
did
the
some
2068
yes.
and do other interesting things, like talk to the emulated interface 1.
Well, I have that article, the 2068 emulator, the article by Keith Watson. He says that this Z80 emulator is written by, he just says the person's last name of Gerton.
That's his first name.
Luther.
That's his first name.
Luther
Yeah,
is
I
the
think
last
like
name.
Luther.
Luther?
Okay.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But Gerton is last name. But yeah, because I recognize Keith from the thing. Like, hey, he was our
Tim,
show.
your wife might recognize herself in this picture.
Yes, I brought her over. Right, and that's the girl is my daughter Caitlin, the oldest, who we'll go see later today.
Oh,
So-
waiting for us now.
Oh, is she? Okay. Oh, they're there already?
Yeah.
Oh, they're there already. We're
you
going to
better bring a
Greek Fest
Timex for her to
after.
see.
Yeah. So actually, guys, since she's already at the Greek Fest, I'm going to take off then and go
All right.
there.
Okay.
Okay,
Bye, Tim.
hanging out with us.
All right, gentlemen. Talk to you guys later.
Take
Bye,
care.
Tim.
God.
So we're down to about 10 minutes left. What do we have for final business going on? Anyone
Well,
need to say something, and then maybe we can catch up when we're going to have the next meeting.
Our next meeting is Labor Day, gentlemen.
Yes.
So you can bring your hot dogs, but you can't bring your barbecue. If Labor Day is a challenge for you, well, okay. But we'll be here. We'll be here to talk about the silliness that is our world.
Let's see.
Maybe Jeff, we didn't get an update from you. Do you have a quick update on your project, or do you want to keep it until the next meeting?
Well, just a quick update. I've got the code written. I'm able to hook into the 2068 ROM, load and save programs, and load and save code files, things like that.
Oh.
And now I'm getting to the point where I need to fish or cut bait on how the interface works, because disk files are a whole different animal than using tape for storing programs.
Yeah.
And for instance, the issue is like Frogger. It has 3 separate sections of the tap file that have to be read in. So I'm trying to figure out the best way and the most intuitive way that I can get the software to use things like that. So I should, by the next meeting, I should have something more.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I know that is an issue with those multiple programs in a single tap file.
Yeah. I think what they do for like some of the other stuff is they make it so you have a Z80 snapshot, and like so it's a different format altogether. So you can either convert it to, I think, a Z80 snapshot, and I've used them both. They both work on the one I have for the Spectrum that I use with the Twister board, but you can also use tap files as well. You know what I'm talking about, David?
Yeah.
Snapshots, yes.
Yeah. Okay. You looked a little confused there for a minute.
No, I was just thinking, because I was just trying to think if, what do you do? So there's a tap to snap converter, I believe.
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah.
And so that was what I was thinking is, well, what do you do if you have something that's not been converted? You just use the converter.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I like about the Oliger. You can do an NMI save, and it just dumps the whole computer into one file. And then when you load it, it's just like you loaded it back. I mean, it's some of these programs that you get on tape that are hard to crack, they're mostly machine code anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like the easiest way for me to put them on a disk is just hit that NMI button and just save it the state of the computer, and it saves it all as one chunk. And then when it loads it exactly the same way, just like you'd loaded it from the tape or whatever. The machine's in the exact same state it was when it saved that code and everything else. So it's kind of neat.
And I think that is essentially a snapshot.
I think
Yeah,
what you're describing sounds just like a
more or
snapshot.
less.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think he just words it a little differently, but
Okay.
it's exactly the same thing. I think it just saves everything, the state of the machine. So
I didn't realize you could do that on real hardware. I thought that was just something they did under emulation.
No,
So
there's
that's
a
cool.
there's a button
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah,
on
there's
the
a
that's
little
cool.
I got a
card.
button. I just pushed the button and hit numbers 1 through 9, whatever number you want to call it, and then you have to go in and rename it, of course. But
You called it what? NMI? Because that's non-maskable interrupt.
yeah, exactly. That's
That's
what
a
he calls
machine-
it.
Yeah.
And
So it must be
hit
using that line.
Yep, you hit that red button, and then you just hit
He
one
must
of
have
the
some
number
code.
keys,
He
and
must
it
have some
dumps
code that
everything
he
to
wrote.
one file.
Yeah.
So it's pretty slick. But
So
he also allows you to break into that file if you want.
oh, nifty. Okay.
I can actually hit that button, and I can stop a machine code program and get in there and do whatever I want sometimes.
Oh,
Now,
like look at the hex data?
Yeah, some code
Oh,
will
cool.
crash, some won't, but it depends on how it's written. But
Oh,
I can
that's
actually get into
fascinating.
programs that normally I wouldn't be able to get into.
Wow, it seems pretty advanced. I didn't realize that something like that existed in that. And that's on the Oliver disk system. Is that what-
Oliger, John
Oliger?
Oliger,
Yeah.
yeah. He's got a lot
that's
of
neat.
nice little utilities in his code.
I know when I do
Let's see.
machine language, you could load code from another program like into the assembler, and you could run it through the assembler and step through it that way too.
Ah,
I don't know if it was a Timex. Maybe I'm thinking because I used to, when I went to high school, they didn't have another computer course for me, so they made a course specifically for me called Individualized Studies. And basically what I did is I went to class and I did whatever the teacher told me to do. And basically what he wanted me to do was crack commercial software. Just not necessarily to resell it, but you learn a lot of machine language on the IBM. That I was doing it on the PC at the time, but I know you had to load code into the assembler, and then you would step through it to see where what it was doing, so you could circumvent the copy protection.
You're this copy stuff that was not for the Timex then. You were doing it
No.
for like.
I want to say that there was probably something that I used to do like that in Hot Z as well, because I know Hot Z I think you could load code into and you could step it through, so you could see what was going on.
Wow.
That's pretty interesting story.
I wanna-
Yeah, that was what I did in senior year in high school at the CRC. I think they used to call it the Career Enrichment Center here. I don't know what they call it now, but I went to electronics was my sophomore year. Junior was some kind of computer course. I can't remember what it was, and then senior year, yeah, they didn't have another. So he's like, if you want to come back, man, I'll have you cracking stuff.
So was that the politically correct way of saying hacker?
I guess so. Because it really, you really learned how they copy protected stuff back then. Because I remember one that sticks in my head is they would burn a hole in the disk with a laser on a certain track, right? And that was the copy protection. They would try to write to that track. They would read it back, and if it read back, they'd say, "Hey, man, this is a copy," and it would kick it out. But you just go in there and knock a couple of things out, right? So it doesn't jump if it finds it, and then there you go, you've cracked it.
I'm just thinking of the easiest way to crack that was put a freaking laser beam on your forehead, like in Austin Towers, the sharks. I'll crack that disc.
Yeah.
Angry sea bass.
That's right. You got it.
Hey, Willie, listen, when I started doing my website, you're the person apparently that I hoped would find it useful. And so it warms my heart. It warms my heart that it got you to take your stuff out of your closet, because that was my goal. I kid you not.
It's brought a whole new world back. I really appreciate it.
That was exactly my goal.
Yeah, well, you mission accomplished. Actually, you brought a couple, 2 or 3 people back that I know of. So
excellent.
And meeting all you good folks has helped just keep it going. So
I know
Let's put those good in quotes.
This is icing as far as I'm concerned.
It's been a lot of fun. I mean, I have to say, I wished I had a lot of these resources back in the day because, wow, I just can't imagine. And then seeing how much stuff is just out there still just amazes me. And to see that, how active the Spectrum world is unbelievable. It's like it's never even slowed down. I mean, it's unbelievable. But I just never got onto that bandwagon. Even though I've got a couple of them, I just never really jumped onto that bandwagon for some reason. I just always, stuck with the 2068. So, but anyway.
So I guess we got about a minute left. So Labor Day, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
What do you mean 7 p.m.? 9 p.m.
No, oh, sorry, that's 7 p.m. Man, I'm really confusing things now. See, don't listen to me. This is why I got to clear it with you. See, I can't run one of these meetings. Forget about
Start
it.
at 9 on the East Coast, go to 8 Central, 7 Mountain,
Yeah.
6
The forgotten time zone.
Yeah.
Pacific. Yeah, right. It
Yeah.
is.
That's where
I have to
Denver
think
is.
about it
That's,
all
you
the
know,
time.
that's what people say. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
I'll
I
see
guess
you-
that's about it.
I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't have anybody from the overseas, because that's kind of what this meeting time
Right.
slot
So
was for.
one of the guys said he wasn't going to be able to make it, but yeah, actually both of them did. Joao and the other guy both couldn't make it, which is unfortunate. But no, Tim. I was hoping we'd see Tim today as well.
Oh, Tim. Yeah.
Tim
Tim
Horner.
2. T2.
T2.
Yeah. All right, folks. I've got to get out of here. I've got something to go
Yep.
to. I'll
too.
see y'all later, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Hey, Dave, did you get your cards?
Not yet, but
Okay, they're in the mail, buddy. You should
Cool.
get them any day.
all right. Thank you, sir.
Yep, you
All right.
got it.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All
Later,
right,
guys.
have a good one, guys.